You know that new phone you just bought, or your car, or even the shirt you're wearing right now? Ever stop and wonder what's really baked into that price tag? Yeah, there's the cost of materials and labor, but there's also this powerful and often totally invisible economic tool at play, the tariff. It's just one word, but it can reshape global trade, start international fights, and yeah, it can definitely hit your wallet. All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First up, we'll cover the absolute basics. What even is a tariff? Then we'll look at why countries have been using them for centuries. After that, we get to the big one. Who really pays for all this? From there, we'll see how things can get messy and escalate into a full-blown trade war. And finally, we'll bring it all home and talk about what it means for you.
Okay, let's just jump right in. Let's start with a simple, clear definition so we're all on the same page. When people throw around the word tariff, what are they actually talking about? At its heart, a tariff is just a tax. Simple as that. Sometimes you'll hear it called a customs duty. So when a company in one country wants to bring in goods from another country, its own government meets them at the border and charges a fee. And that fee is the tariff. This is probably the best way to think about it. It's literally like a toll booth for goods. Just like a truck pays a toll to use a highway, a shipment of products has to pay up before it can enter a country's market. Now, the idea itself is simple, but the reasons behind it and the chaos it can cause, that's where things get complicated. And, tariffs aren't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. They really come in two main flavors. The first is a protective tariff. The goal here is pretty clear. Make the foreign stuff more expensive so that your own local businesses have a better shot at competing. The second kind is a revenue tariff. And this one's even more straightforward. It's just about raising money for the government. So this isn't some new idea. Tariffs have been a core part of economic policy for ages. So what is it about them that makes them such a popular and, let's be honest, controversial tool for governments? Well, when you think about it, tariffs give a government a whole lot of control. They can use them to help out new infant industries that aren't quite ready to compete on the world stage. They can use them to protect jobs, bring in a steady stream of cash, and they can even use them as a weapon to retaliate against other countries. And to see how this plays out, you just have to look at the history of the United States. The whole reason for using tariffs has completely changed over time. You can really break it down into three big eras. At first, it was all about the money. For a while there, tariffs were bringing in up to 95% of all federal revenue. Then things shifted to restriction, using super high tariffs to protect industries in the North. But for the last 90 years or so, the game has changed again. Now, it's all about reciprocity, using tariffs as a bargaining chip to get other countries to lower their trade barriers. Okay, this brings us to the biggest, most debated question of all. When a government slaps a tariff on something, who actually ends up paying for it? This is what a lot of people think, and it makes sense on the surface, right? The tax is on goods from another country, so it seems like that other country should be the one paying. But is that really what happens? Not quite. In reality, the company that brings the goods into the country is the one who cuts the check to its own government. And what do you think that company does next? They're running a business, so they're not just going to eat that cost. More often than not, they pass it on. It gets tacked on to the price they charge wholesalers, who tack it on to the price for retailers, who then tack it on to the price tag you see in the store. And we're not just talking about pennies here. That cost can really add up. A study highlighted by the Henrik Foundation estimated that price hikes from tariffs could work out to an average income loss of about $2,700 per U.S. household in 2025. Now, you don't get a bill for that in the mail. It's more of a hidden cost that's spread out across pretty much everything you buy all year. And this gets to a really critical point about fairness. Economists call tariffs a regressive tax. That's just a fancy term that means they hit lower-income families harder than wealthier ones. Think about it. A rich family might not even notice a price jump on clothes or a new appliance, but for a family on a really tight budget, those same price increases can be a huge deal because a much bigger slice of their income goes toward those basic goods. So here's where things get really weird and kind of counterintuitive. Tariffs are supposed to protect domestic companies from imports, but they can accidentally end up hurting a country's exports. How does that work? Okay, imagine a car company that imports steel to build its cars. Then the government puts a big tariff on that steel. All of a sudden, it costs more to build the car. So when that company tries to sell its American-made car in another country, its price is higher, which makes it less competitive.
So a tax on an import just became a hidden tax on an export. So if tariffs raise prices for your own citizens and can even hurt your own exporters, you'd think countries would avoid them, right? Well, not always. This is where things can escalate, and fast. Let's look at what happens when countries start firing back. It just seems like a bad move, doesn't it? Why would a government knowingly make things more expensive for its own people just to get back at another country? The answer is all about politics and strategy. It's basically a high-stakes game of economic chicken. A retaliatory tariff isn't always about protection. It's about inflicting targeted pain. You pick key exports from the other country, things that are really important to their economy, and you tax them. The goal is to make farmers, factory workers, and businesses in that other country feel the burn so much that they complain to their own government and pressure them to back down. It's all a tactic to force everyone back to the negotiating table. And history gives us a pretty stark warning about how this can all go horribly wrong. Just look at the Smoot-Hawley Act in 1930. The idea was to protect American jobs at the start of the Great Depression, but the reaction from other countries was swift and brutal. They threw up their own tariff walls, and the result wasn't protection, it was paralysis. Global trade just froze, imports and exports tanked, and it actually helped make the Great Depression much, much worse. It's a huge lesson in unintended consequences. Okay, so let's pull all this together. We've talked about the history, the economics, the global strategy, but how does this complicated dance of tariffs and trade wars actually affect your life? It's so important to remember that tariffs are not neutral. They create very clear winners and losers. The winners are usually a pretty small group, the specific companies and workers who are now protected from foreign competition. But the group of losers is much, much bigger. It includes pretty much every consumer, because we're all paying higher prices. And it includes all the other companies that now have higher costs or are getting hit by those retaliatory tariffs overseas. And these price hikes are very real. Research shows us exactly what we might be looking at. I mean, we're talking about potential price increases of 41% on metals. That's your car, your washing machine, a 37% jump on clothing. These are big numbers on everyday things that hit household budgets hard. And while we tend to focus on the big economies, it's often the smallest, most vulnerable countries that get hit the hardest. A report from UNCTAD found that these back-and-forth tariffs can be devastating for developing nations. For instance, a big country might put a tariff on vanilla from Madagascar. For the big country, that tariff is a drop in the bucket. But for Madagascar's economy, where vanilla is a huge export, it could be crippling. And that really brings us to the core of it all. In today's world, where a single smartphone has parts from Germany, a screen from South Korea, and is assembled in China, a tariff isn't just a simple tax on one country. It's a shockwave that ripples through a super complex global web. And it leaves us with a really critical question. In this modern, interconnected economy, does the old logic of a trade war even make sense anymore? Or in the end, does everybody just pay the price?